This is going to be one of those comparison videos. Nothing meant or said for any legal purposes intended. It's the same drill. I've been busy, so my brain's kind of discombobulated, but I'll try and get through this. This is all history, and this one's on a couple of my favorite dogs, or one of my favorite dogs, and one of them was just a badass dog. You know, it's Boyles champion Bobby Jr. versus Mountain Man's champion Homer. Now, in recent times, they were two prolific dogs, at least in my day, as far as being recognized for their accomplishments, and in the brood pen as well, being stud dogs. Bobby Jr. was a 38-pound dog, I believe, around there. He was sired by Patrick's Bull Boy Bob out of Patrick's Mabel. There's always controversy about pedigrees, you know, how dogs are really bred and this and that. I won't get into it, but you know, to paraphrase what Boyles said, that's the pedigree he got, so that's what he goes by. So that would make Bobby Jr. a double bred, half brother, half sister off the Indian Boleo. And Bull Boy Bob, well known one-time winner, produced a lot of good dogs. He's in the pedigrees of behind a lot of good dogs as well. Mabel, he was sired by, like I said, Indian Boleo and Patrick's Tuffy. So that would make him one of those Boleo Klaus cross dogs. Mabel was by Indian Boleo out of Patrick's Daisy. She was double bred Boleo, meaning she's father-daughter. Daisy sired by Boleo out of Wyatt's Sable. Sable was Ironhead and Red Girl. Carver's Ironhead and Red. So it's all that good Carver. A lot of Black Widow stuff. And like I said, very popular dog in his day. He was a 3-time winner. I believe he won in 43 minutes, 38 minutes, and an hour 50. That was as long as an hour 50. I never saw him go. I did have some stuff down from Bobby Jr. I consider him a typical Boleo dog, basically. Like I said, I never saw him go, but speaking with Boyles, you know, he was smart, he was fast, he was game, of course. I wouldn't say that he was a top competitor like a lot of champions are, but he was no slouch, and he was good enough to beat 3 dogmen in the deep south in Florida, which was always a hotbed of competition down there. Regardless of what time period, once the dogs came to Florida, it became a place where top dogmen congregated to compete with their dogs, and it has always been that way. You know, during that time, you know, there were Boyles. I think Boyles was originally from Georgia, but when he moved to Florida, he a little town called Yulee, Florida, real close to Jacksonville. That was, like I said, Florida had a lot of top dog men. Baker Davis, of course, Jimmy Lee, James Hann, Freddie Haikila. I think John Shabar was from there. You just have a ton of people that competed with their dogs. Boyles was kind of different from everybody else because he started off with Bobby Jr. and Dirty Mary. So it's a Boleo, Grand Champion Hank, Klaus blood. And that area was heavily influenced with Boomerang dogs, and Midnight Cowboy dogs, Shivo dogs, a lot of, you know, Happy Jack and Eunice's Candyman, and You have Smiling Jack and a lot of that heavy Eli 3 stuff, and just Bully Son, Eli Jr. dogs. Also the Divines were down there, so they brought some of the Eli Jr. Java stuff with Patty, of course with Cassius Clay Blood, and all those great dogs down there, that blood. So you see Bobby Jr. heavily influenced by Boyles blood. I never really heard of any siblings of his, except for one, a female named C. Mayfield's Piggy. And I'm guessing C. Mayfield was Curtis Mayfield. He was out here he was the West Coast dog man. And of course everybody knows Patrick said dogs everywhere. I don't know what became of Piggy or if she ever produced anything. But Curtis Mayfield was a top dog guy out here from Northwest. And he had a lot of good dogs too. Going to his offspring, some people will remember a lot of these dogs because their influence at the time was felt with different top dog men. Boyles wasn't shy about selling dogs, and his prices were very reasonable. His pups was like $300. You could get grown dogs from him for $800 to $1,000 bucks. You know, sometimes you could get a one-time winner, two-time winner for $1,000 bucks. I mentioned it before. I could have got Champion Bolt Action before, he was around 2 years old, before his career started, for $800 bucks, and could have got Queen of Hearts for $1,000. I passed on them, but I did get something from bred similar to Queen of Hearts bottom side. I was looking for a pure boomerang female to cross with my Boyles stuff and my Bully Son Smith, which were two popular crosses back in the day as well. I did get a female. She didn't turn out, so that kind of fell out. But nonetheless, I got several dogs from Boyles, and they worked good. From the Dirty Mary breeding, I believe he made the breeding twice. I'm not sure. Maybe he remembers or he doesn't remember. But there were several dogs off of that. So it was either one great big old litter or two litters. But I'll just read through some of them. From the Dirty Mary breeding, there was Bunce's Champion Toad. He was a 4-time winner, 1-time loser. He actually lost to, well, here's his record. 4-time winner. He beat Bengotti's dog. He beat Larry Combs, who was Super Nat. I don't have a time on the Bengotti's dog match, but Combs' dog, whichever one, I don't have the dog's name, but he beat him in 54 minutes. Then he beat Holland's Hobo, a 1-time winner, in 36 minutes. Holland, I believe he's the same one who owned Cherokee Chief, Grand Champion Cherokee Chief. And then he beat Miller's Mr. T in 25 minutes. So Toad, short order cook, maybe. It could be that he was fast and violent and overcome his opponents. Maybe he had a hard mouth, or he was just real rough and non-stop. You could win short fights that way too. It doesn't have to be a devastating mouth. Maybe he was a hard mouth. I don't remember from the back in the day. And then he lost a long fight to Rebel's Little Buck, who was a 1-time winner, in 1 hour 47 minutes. So he was definitely a good dog, owned by Bunce and Company, Frank Bunce. You might all remember him from back in the day. Very popular dog man from the Michigan area. Also in that litter was his brother Tadpole, and Bunce got 2 of them. He got Toad and Tadpole. Tadpole was a 2-time winner, and he lost a third match. I believe it was like in 1 hour and 6 or something like that. Yeah, to RC and the Social Boys champion Bronco. So he beat 2 good dogs, and he lost to a top dog. Also another brother named Indian Joe that Boyles had. He was a 2-time winner, and he lost in 1 hour 20 minutes to grand champion Bronson. That was a good match. All these write-ups were in the magazine. Even though they're short, you could tell they're good matches. Indian Joe, he got to Bronson early, but Bronson came back. And if you listen to Renault Morris, he'll tell you that it was either Indian Joe or it was Tadpole. One of them was making crawling scratches at the end of the match. I was friends with a couple of guys from back there. I got introduced to Boyles by Boyles to them, Butch and Tom, real good people. Shortly after I met him, Tommy got killed. So rest in peace, Tommy. Sad day, but they had a dog from that litter named Psycho, Butch and Tom Psycho. I think he went 2 hours and 37 minutes with the Sosa Boys. That was part of that unbeaten streak that the Sosa Boys had, was 18 wins in a row with 2 draws. One of the draws was against Psycho in 2 hours and 37 minutes. There's Black Beauty and Windy City Columbines Coco. Indian Sunny and Cutter got one of the dogs. He called him Pepe the Pew. And they matched him out here. He lost in 1 hour, what was it? Hour 40 to Red Danger. On that card, Red Danger got best in show. And he had beaten, I think Red Danger had beaten Mexican Dan. And then he beat Pat and Cutter. Sonny and Cutter. In 1 hour 40. That was a good show. Had Champion Bullshit on that show. Red Danger, Elrod, and Hawkeye were all on that show. They all white dogs. They all won. King David was there. Abraham's King David. He lost to Roadblock's champion Bo, I believe. And Abraham had another one named Fox. There was also, what was her name? Black Gold, which was one of Boyles' top producing females. Black Gold was in that litter too. And also a female that went to Europe, Van Houten's Baby O, another good producer from that litter. He went to across the pond to, I believe, the Netherlands, Amsterdam area. That was Baby O. So you got Champion Toad and Tadpole, Black Gold. Clyde the Undertaker was a 2-time winner. Van Houten's Baby O, Indian Joe, Butch and Tom Psycho. Black Beauty was on there in that litter, or those litters. WCC's Coco, Pepe Le Pew, King David, and Fox. So it was a pretty good breed. They beat some good dogs. They lost to the very best, especially in Rebel Kennels and Champion Bo and Champion Bronco and Grand Champion Bronson. It don't get much better than that. So if you're going to lose to somebody or certain opponents, those will be the people to lose to. And they beat some good guys too. He beat Super Nat, he beat Bobby Holland and different opponents as well. Now, probably the best female, and when this female is compared to other females, she's up there with Shady Lady and Tornado and Grand Champion Spooky and Tudor's Goldie or Honey Bunch, as far as a competitor is concerned. Competition dogs. When you talk about top-notch females in the history of the breed, Grand Champion Queen of Hearts is up there. 8-time winner. Abraham's Grand Champion Queen of Hearts. She beat a 4-time winner, a couple of 3-time winners. You know, she beat one of the females from the litter mate to champion Sandman and champion Toot. And, you had Ruby in there, and just a lot of from that litter from the River Kennels. Queen of Hearts beat one of them. Like all her stuff was under 40 minutes, I think, if I'm not mistaken. She beat Pepper. Pepper was a 4-time winner. Nice female. And like I said, one of the top females in the history of British farce competition dogs. And Queen of Hearts produced some good dogs too. But she was by Bobby Jr. out of Boyles Ready. Her litter mates were Mavis, a 1-time winner, Spanky, T-Boy, a 2-time winner. So it was pretty decent litter, and they all produced in their own way some pretty good dogs. WCC ended up with a couple of them. Boyles incorporated them into his breeding as well. He also produced Boyles Bobby Sue, who was behind that little Ronnie dog that I got from Boyles that I talk about all the time. Bobby Sue was by Bobby Jr. out of Miss Chainsaw Red, or Sweet Pea as she was called. Sweet Pea was a 1-time winner as well. She beat a 4-time winner from, who was it? It was either James Hand or Jimmy Lee. I can't remember which one, but she beat a 4-time winner in 37 minutes. Sweet Pea did. He also produced Tozer's Cole, who was a 2-time winner, Hackman's Coco, and Black Bobby, and Dave's Black Poison. They were all litter mates. Poison was a 1-time winner. They were out of Miss Champ, and that Miss Champ was a Grand Champion Hank and Boomerang cross, that famous cross that Vinagro and Bob Hackman did. Hackman don't get a lot of credit sometimes. Maybe you don't know him too well, but he produced a lot of good dogs. And he had that. He had Bobby Jr. stuff. He had, before that, he had Boomerang stuff, a lot of Boomerang dogs, and incorporated some of the Grand Champion Hank stuff too. So it's just natural, if he would breed a Grand Champion Hank Boomerang dog to Bobby Jr. Because it just proven to produce. So that's a little bit about Bobby Jr. At one time I remember Boyles was selling several dogs, and if I'm not mistaken, Bobby Jr. was already a 3-time winner or a 4-time winner or whatever. He had him advertised as, and it said he was house trained and retired champion. I believe he was 4 or 5 years old, not that old, and he's for sale for $400, if I'm not mistaken, unless it's a misprint or my memory's bad. But it wasn't very much. It just goes to what I said about Boyles. He would sell dogs that not that expensive, and they were good dogs, a lot of them. In fact, I got Ronnie from him. I got Smoke Girl. I won one with her, and Blue Eye, 1-time winner, and I got Tank. I lost with her. She was either a sister to Boyles Ready or a daughter or something like that. Real close relation to Ready. She just didn't pan out for me. I lost with her, but as you can see, and these dogs, even Champion Home along with Bobby Jr., and a lot of dogs, like I mentioned before, they weren't bred that much. Most of them have under 100 offspring. And I think both Bobby Jr. and Homer have under 100 offspring, and they produce several top males. And like I said, with the Bobby Jr. dogs, when they lose to some of the very best. And when they win, they beat some of the very best, like Toad did, and like Clyde the Undertaker did, and so did Queen of Hearts, So I always liked that blood. I was partial to Boyles stuff back in the day, and that's the Boyles stuff I like more heavily on that. And I think, due to the competition, Boyles felt, he needed more mouth, maybe some more strength and stuff. That's why he made those Eli crosses to Grand Champion Cherokee Chief, and Dirty Mary to Cherokee Chief, and then Dirty Mary to Dutch Boy Jr. or Dutch Boy, I forget which one. And he bred, I think he bred maybe Sweet Pea or one of the females to Thrift Champion Bumper. That's where limited edition came from. And eventually he kind of got back to more heavily on the Boyles side when they bred Penny Sue to, I forget what dog it was, but that's what produced Grand Champion. He produced Grand Champion Snaps, but it was Grand Champion Handicap, right? Top dog beat some top dog man. I know he beat So-So Boy Dakota, was a 2-time winner. He ended up being a 5-time winner, but that's more going towards the Boyles side. And then Handicap, of course, produced Desert Warriors Comanche more heavily on the Boyles side. And then, you know, I've been speaking to interviewing the musician. He got some of that stuff too got some Comanche stuff from Desert Warrior and that stuff. It's good blood. I always liked it. You know, little Ronnie dog, one of my favorites. So that's a little bit about Bobby Jr. Now we get into, this dog was probably more popular because of how he's bred and what he did and who had him, and also the dogs he produced. Mountain Man's Champion Homer. 4-time winner on record. Some people say he won as many as 8. Giving up weight. This and that had more fights than 4, but generally, definitely 4. 42 to, honestly, 46 pounds. His last match, it was only like a 43-pound dog. He went uphill 3 pounds and matched at 46 pounds to beat Avery Smokey in 2 hours. I don't know if he survived that match. I don't think he did. But definitely a great dog, that accomplishment. Just people say he would read the stories, he would pull teeth out. He was heavily scarred. They show his muzzle. I don't know if that was that skin disease they get, or was the damage he sustained from all his shows, or both. But if you look at his pictures, you can see the damage on his shoulders and legs, just heavy, big puncture wounds, heavily scarred. So that tells me he was that type that would get in there. And with those type of dogs, when they're heavily scarred up on the head and the ears and the shoulders, maybe the chest or something like that, you don't see too many scars, if at all, on their back end, meaning that dogs don't generally get to their back end. Big Red was that way. All his stuff is up front. Bill too. All this stuff is up front. Bill has scars, you know, lashes, lacerations on his muzzle, and some on his legs and stuff like that. But Mr. Rowdy the same way. They don't get too much past their front end because they're so strong and powerful. Good mouths and stuff like that. Keeps their opponent out. On top of Homer's head, you see all that. Just an excellent dog. You know, it was said Mountain Man used to keep his opponent's teeth that he would rip out of their mouths and all that. I don't know if they're wives' tale, they're true or whatever, but regardless, he was just a devastating dog, and a top-notch competitor, and a damn good producer. Born in '79, his breeder was Honeycutt, and Coast Mountain Man owned him, and he owned a lot of great dogs in his day. I think that went out to other people. We all know he had Zebo, he had Homer, he had Spooky, he had a lot of different dogs that sometimes he would use them and then sell them, you know, like that. After he won with them, or they'd be grown and he'd sell them. But Homer was signed. This is Mountain Man's Homer. Plus, he was a ROM. I don't think Bobby Jr. made ROM, even during that day where a male had to have 3 champions. I believe he only produced Grand Champion Queen of Hearts and Champion Toad. I think that's why he's not on the ROM list, but he definitely would have made the POR list because he had a ton of winners off of him. But Mountain Man's Homer did make the ROM this. He's sired by Crenshaw's champion Rascal, or Tojo, Rascal Jr. I'm sorry, not Rascal, but Rascal Jr., or call him Tojo too. He was a three-time winner. Out of Mark's Midnight 1. Rascal Jr. is out of Rascal, Champion Rascal and Champion Honey Bunch, both ROMs. I believe. Mark's Midnight is out of Lapace's Buster and Lapace's Queen. So Rascal Jr. wanted, I incorporated that blood into my stuff too, into my Jeep dog, because of the commonality of Honey Bunch. So my stuff started off with the Jeep Rascal cross, and then inbred Rascal. That's what produced Sissy. And then later on, I brought Champion Ninja to my stuff, to Miss Rowdy, Big Red's sister, which brought that Rascal Jr. back into the forefront, brought it to the front again. So of course, that's all Eli Jr. and Brendy and Eli and, Bully's son. And of course with Honey Bunch, you have Carver's Amber. That's the Cracker and Beauty Tea stuff. It's all heavy Eli with some Carver in there. It's one of those, Rascal Jr. would be one of those Eli Carver crosses, if you want to call it that. Mark's Midnight 1 was out of Buster and Queen. Of course, Buster's from that famous litter of Bully's son to Arts Missy. Arts Missy being a two-time winner and a sister to Grand Champion Boomerang and Petronelli's Fox and Brown's Champion Nell, Willie Brown's Champion Nell. Lapace's Queen was out of Cummings Eli 3, who was a ROM, and Lapace's Beanie. Now, it's interesting because Beanie is out of Leitner's Rough House and Skinner's Roadie. So that's a little cross of the old Leitner stuff back there, bred to the Eli Carver thing again. So Rascal Jr. himself is heavily influenced by Eli, and with some Carver, which always goes good, and a little bit of Leitner stuff. I don't recall him having any siblings. I'd have to check again to make sure. But his offspring, and I think he did have siblings. He had one of them. What's the dog's name? Forgive me, but I forget. It was a little female, a little male. I think he got killed in a chain accident. But it was another male. You guys can help me out in the comments. And he might have had more litter mates than that. But as far as offspring go, he produced several good dogs and several champions. There's a real famous female named Mountain Man Spider Bit'em, right? Some people say Spider Bite'em. Where the name came from, if you read the old journals and all that, is when she bit you, it was like a spider bit them. When she bit her opponents. That's where that term came from. So some people say spider bite them, but I always felt it was meant to be spider bit them because that's how they said it when they described when she bit her opponents. It was like a spider bit them. So that was her name. She was by a female named Susie, and she produced Grand Champion Shady Lady. Homer also produced Mountain Man's Champion Homer Jr., a four-time winner, Rebel's Bossy. Now Rebel's Bossy, believe it or not, I think Loghead, a friend of Loghead's, brought her out here. It was either Bossy or a daughter of Bossy, but we bred her to Big Red and it just didn't work out. That would have been a hell of a breeding. Lutz's champion Little Homer and champion Homegirl produced Mountain Man's champion Little Bill, three-time winner, one-time loser. 3D Kennel's champion Yo-Yo. Page's Brutus, a two-time winner who's a POR. He produced Rebel's Grand Champion Spooky. I think she beat Bobby Hall's Princess, who was a seven-time winner. I'm not sure, but people who were there described it as a hell of a match, back and forth, and then Luke coming on at the end to beat Princess. I think Nick the Greek had something to do with Princess, her conditioning, or he was there or something like that. But he described it as a great match. So a lot of these dogs that Homer produced beat some top competition, and they were some of the best. Shady Lady, 5-time winner, I think her total time was like 30-something minutes or something. Just, you got 6 minutes here, 11 minutes, 5 minutes, like that. I saw a little clip of her one time, and I would say the way to describe her was she was violent. And like I mentioned before, that's how a lot of dogs can beat other dogs quickly, and if they have mouth, it just expedites it. Because they're not only doing damage, but they're shaking you up and banging you up and throwing you around, just overwhelming you. And if a dog can't hang, which a lot of them can't, they either hang it up or they're picked up. I mean, they'll take your whole body and slam you. It's kind of like, I talked about OTK's Daisy. She was like that, very violent. Just get in there and fast. That's another thing that they have in common. That speed to get in there. I mean, they're in your corner before you take 2 steps out. And they overwhelm you, get you back in the corner, pick you up and slam you down. Daisy was that way. Even if you latch onto their ear or their head or their muzzle even, they're just working so hard and doing so much damage that you start to fade quickly. And like I said, Shady Lady won fast. Even Daisy, I saw her win her first one, she won in 22 minutes. It didn't take long. Fighting a 2-time winner just good. And people, they kind of, well, who did Shady Lady beat and this and that? She beat some top guys. You're not gonna, you might get by on 1 or 2 opponents, but when people see you and they know what you can do, and they see you take dogs out fast, and they still challenge you, they figure they have something to beat you. It's either something with a heavy mouth or something just as fast or something very strong or something that they think that they can beat you with. And with Shady Lady, she just stepped up to the plate and dispelled all the detractors from her, who thought, well, we can beat her, we got something. That always comes up, I had a little violent female like that I sold to Joey, and she ended up making Champion K. It was by Bill, and Champion Bill, and Lucy. She was violent that way. She was so crazy, she would get so wound up, she would fight her own self, fight her own stifle. A lovable, good mother, and good with the kids and all that, but just a screamer in the corner and violent like that, and just attack, and stay and hold, I put her with her sister, Bambi, who ended up being a 2-time winner later. Bambi was about 5 pounds bigger, and she would just, for a little bit, stood toe-to-toe with Bambi, because Bambi was a good female too, And when Bambi would get the advantage, I let her beat her up for a little bit, and then I'd sling, trip Bambi, put her on the ground, lay her down, and let Kay get her licks in too, She was only like a 30, 31 pound or something like that, low 30s, just violent. Even from the ground, she would shake, And against a bigger dog, her mother would do the same thing. They would shake so hard, they would lift her back feet off the ground. That's how violent they were against bigger opponents. Lucy was about a 40-pound female, and I put her on a 50-pound female, and she went toe-to-toe with her. She actually got the better of her as far as damage goes, and better, swapping it out. They're just that way. Insane females. I like them that way. Crazy, nasty, mean, dirty, whatever you want to call it, but good with kids, good with people, good mothers in the brood pen. So I had a lot of respect for Homer. You read about him and go, man, he's a badass. And like I said, he whipped a lot of dogs. Now I don't, you know, there people. A lot of people don't like comparing who would win and all that, you know. But I'm gonna be asked, and I'm always asked. So I kind of got over that, you know, where it makes me uncomfortable to pick and choose. But I don't see Bobby Jr. beating Homer. You know, I see him maybe not quitting against Homer, and I see him putting up a fair amount of defense for himself. But I think Homer, like he did with a lot of opponents, because he could go uphill so much and still win. I think in the end, and it might not have took too long for him to beat Bobby Jr. But again, Bobby Jr. was no slouch. Those dogs in the right hand, and what happens a lot of times, and this is across the board, sometimes dogs are mishandled, meaning they're not in their best shape, they're not at their right weight, maybe they're not all the way healthy. And you know, the same can be said for the two dogs I'm talking about, meaning that or some of the dogs I was talking about, meaning that some of the offspring, you know, maybe they were at a disadvantage. It happens, but when they were right, they did their best. And Homer, in his case, moving up in weight like that and still winning, that's quite an accomplishment. It's a lot. Like I said, I don't think he survived. Kind of like Grand Champion Outlaw, he didn't survive his last match. And 7-time winner, you know, it just took everything out of him. But when you take it all into account, both top-notch producers, Homer a top-notch competitor, Bobby Jr. a solid competitor, and I think they deserve the respect, and they'll go down in history being remembered as great examples of the American Pit Bull Terrier. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching again. More vids on the way. Appreciate your support.